Hello! Welcome back to the continuation of Accounting 101 blog. Today, we will discuss the recording of business transactions using the financial worksheet. The other option of recording is using the T account. But for today, we focus our discussion on recording business transactions using the financial worksheet. That being said, we will again use the basic formula of accounting equation. The sum of total liabilities and owner's equity on the right side must equal to assets on the left side. In order to appreciate the accounting equation, we apply it to the business of Maria Leonora Robredo. She decided to establish a sole proprietorship business under the trade name Angat Buhay Designs. Robredo is a graphic designer who has extensive experience in drawing, web design and layout, lettering, printing, and even photography. We will record the business transactions that occurred during the month of July 2022. So on July 2, Ms. Robredo deposited 350,000 at Metrobank Alabang branch as initial capital. An entity separate and distinct from Robredo personal financial affairs is created. An economic resource, cash of 350,000 is invested in the business entity. The source of this asset is the contribution made by the owner, which represents owner's equity. Next transaction, July 2. Computer equipment costing 145,000 is acquired on cash basis from Abinson. This transaction did not change the total assets, but it did change the composition of the assets. It decreased one asset, which is cash, and increased another asset, computer equipment, by 145,000 pesos. Note that the sums of the balances on both sides of the equation are equal. This equality must always exist. Next transaction, July 9. Computer supplies worth 25,000 pesos were purchased on account from Paul Soriano Data Blitz store. Acquiring the computer supplies with a promise to pay the amount due later is called buying on account. This transaction increases both the assets and the liabilities of the business. The asset affected is computer supplies, and the liability created is accounts payable. On July 11, Angat Buhay Designs collected 88,000 in cash for designing interactive websites for Daryl Yap's Made in Malacanang online movie promotions. The business earned service income by designing websites for clients. The effect on the accounting equation is an increase in the asset cash and an increase in owner's equity capital. Income increases owner's equity. This transaction caused the business to grow, as shown by the increase in total assets from 375 to 463. On July 16, Robredo paid its Meralco and internet bills amounting to 18,000 pesos to Rimulya Express, a one-stop bills payment service company. Expenses are recorded when they are incurred. Expenses can be paid in cash when they occur, or they can be paid later. The payment for utilities is an expense for the month of July. It represented an outflow of resources and a reduction of owner's equity. Expenses have the opposite effect of income. They cause the business to shrink, as shown by the smaller amount of total assets of 445,000 pesos. July 17. Angat Buhay Designs has service contract with various social media personalities, Kumu artists, and TikTokerists to maintain their websites regularly. The business charged these clients 35,000 for the website maintenance services for July. Angat Buhay is entitled to receive payment for this, but the clients did not pay immediately. Performing the services creates an economic resource. The clients promised to pay the amount, which is called accounts receivable. This transaction resulted to an increase in asset, accounts receivable, and an increase in owner's equity or capital of 35,000 pesos. July 19. Robredo made a partial payment of 17,000 pesos for the July 9 purchase of computer supplies on account. This transaction is a payment on account. The effect on the accounting equation is a decrease in the asset cash and a decrease in the liability accounts payable. The payment of cash on account has no effect on the asset, computer supplies, because the payment does not increase or decrease the supplies available to the business. July 20. Checks amounting to 25,000 pesos were received from clients for billings dated July 17, 2022. The asset cash is increased by 25,000 pesos. The business should not record service revenue on July 20. Why? Because it has already recorded the income last July 17. Total assets remain the same. The business merely reduced one asset, accounts receivable, because of the collection, and increased another asset, that is cash. Next transaction is July 21. Robredo withdrew 20,000 pesos from the business to buy a brand new TCL aircon converter for her house in Cavite. The 20,000 pesos cash withdrawal resulted to a reduction in both cash and capital accounts. The remaining cash is now only 263,000, while the capital is reduced from 455,000 pesos to only 435,000 pesos. While the computer equipment is 145,000 pesos, computer supplies is 25,000 pesos, accounts receivable is 10,000 pesos, resulting to total assets of 443,000 pesos. Next transaction, July 27. Amy Marcos Advertising Company sent invoice to Angat Buhay Designs for 8,000 worth of digital advertisements for the month of July 2022. Amy Marcos rendered services on account. Angat Buhay Designs has incurred advertising expenses amounting to 8,000 pesos by availing Amy Marcos advertising services. There was no payment during the month of July 2022. This advertising expense resulted to a decrease in capital and an increase in the liability accounts payable. Why? Because there is no payment yet. But still, the assets and liability capital is still the same. Total is 443,000 pesos. Next and last transaction for July, Robredo paid Philip D., her assistant designer, salaries of 15,000 pesos for the month. This transaction resulted to a reduction in capital as well as a reduction in cash. Philip D. provided his services to Angat Buhay Designs for the month. The assistant designer has created salaries expense for the business. At the end of the month, the correct balances should be cash, 248,000 pesos, computer equipment, 145,000 pesos, computer supplies, 25,000 pesos, accounts receivable, 10,000 pesos, total assets is now 428,000 pesos. While on the right side of the equation, accounts payable is 16,000 pesos, while capital left is 412,000 pesos, resulting to a total of 428,000 pesos, which is balanced with the total assets. Okay, so let's do some recaps. July 2, Robredo started her business by opening an account with Metrobank Alabang branch with an initial deposit of 350,000 pesos. So the effect is assets increase, while capital also increased by the establishment of the initial investment. Then July 5, computer equipment costing 145,000 pesos is acquired on cash from Abenson. So there was a payment of cash, so assets decrease. But it will be offsetted by the corresponding increase in equipment amounting to 145,000 pesos. July 9, computer supplies worth 25,000 were purchased on account. On account meaning there is no payment, but there is a liability account created, accounts payable. But there's a corresponding also increase in assets with the acquisition of computer supplies. Next, July 11, collection of 88,000 for designing interactive websites. So assets increase and also capital increase because of the revenue. Next transaction is July 16. Robredo paid the utilities, 18,000. So there's a payment of cash, so assets decrease. And also, since this is our utilities expenses, this will also decrease the capital. July 17, Angat Buhay designs a service contract. So meaning there is a revenue, but there is no collection. So assets will still increase by the accounts receivable, while capital will also increase because of the revenue. July 19, Robredo made a partial payment of 17,000 pesos for the July 9 purchase of computer supplies on account. So there's a payment, so assets decrease. Then liability will also decrease. July 20, checks amounting to 25,000 were received from clients. So there's a collection of cash, so assets increase. Then the accounts receivable will also decrease by the amount of collection. July 21, Robredo withdrew 20,000 from the business. So there's a reduction in cash and a withdrawal, so the capital will also decrease. July 27, Amy Marcos Advertising sent invoice. So there's an advertising expense. So but there's no payment, so there's a liability account that will be created. And this advertising expense will also cause the capital to decrease. Then the final transaction is the payment of the salaries of the assistant designer, which is called salaries expense. Okay, so just to share with you my actual experiences from the outside real world. So this is a common error, the transposition. So for example, the correct amount should be 650,000 pesos, but you incorrectly encoded 560,000 pesos. That would cause an imbalance.